Hello children, welcome to the session of Advanced Web Designing. Till now we have learned about HTML and the types of CSS, the syntax of CSS, how to give the identification labels to the particular elements, to group them using different selectors, so that we can apply a particular style to them. Now in this session we will be learning more about the HTML and CSS with a focus on customizing the layout of the web pages. Now custom layouts, it allows us to break the browser's default pattern of document flow where each element appears below the last. So to begin with, we'll first learn about the CSS box model. Before understanding what is padding, border and margin, we will see what is the CSS box model. Basically, the core of the web page layout is a set of CSS rules and properties collectively known as the CSS box model. When we learn about this box model, it will enable us to change the size and the position of the elements and the gaps and the margins between them. Also, we will be able to position them at the left edge or the right edge of the page. So this is the diagram of the box model where we can see the element which is at the innermost part, and the height and the width is applied to the element. And after that, we have the padding section. So whenever we specify the padding, it will be applied to this part of the border. After the padding, we have the border as shown in this diagram. It is applicable to the left, top, right and bottom of the box. And margin is the outermost part of the box model which surrounds the border, and it is applicable to the left, top, right and bottom. So if we want to measure the overall width and height of an element on the screen, we have to add the content width, which is the element width, plus the right and the left padding. Again, the right and the left and the right border, and plus the left and the right margin. That will give the width of an element. That is the true width of that element. And if we want to measure the height, then we have to add the height of the content of the element plus the top and the bottom padding plus the top and the bottom border and plus the top and the bottom margin value. That will give us the true overall height of the element. Every element in the CSS box model is composed of the content. The content of the box is nothing but the text or the image place where they appear. After the content, we have the padding, which is between the content and the border. If we see the diagram, then we can see padding is a area which is between the content. This is the content and the border. So this is the padding area. So it is affected by the background color of the box. So whatever color we give as background color to that element, like if we specify H1 heading, background color is equal to blue, so that padding also will have that color blue. Then the next area which surrounds the padding, and it lies between padding and margin, is the border, and it is also affected by the background color of the box. After that, we have the margin which lies between the border and the other content, like another element. If there are two H1 tags, then margin is the area between the border of the first H1 tag and the other H1 tag. And this margin will not have any background color and it will be completely transparent. Now what the browser does. Now every element will be in its own box and every box will have its own margin, border, padding, properties and the content. Also every element will have four sides, that is the left, right, top and bottom. And whatever property values we have to set for those margin, border, padding, then we have to set it using CSS. Browser will apply whatever rules have been specified in the properties and the element will be affected. Now what is padding? We can think padding as a filling. We already know it will have the background color. So it will not affect the distance of the element to the other elements, and it is only the inner distance between the border and the content of the element. Now we'll just take one example of padding. What I have done is I have written two H1 tags. One is without padding and the second one is with padding, as we can see it here in the example. This is the second H1 tag which is defined with the padding property, and the first one is just a normal H1 heading. So we can see the difference. See, if we give a padding value, then the distance gets increased between these two elements. As we can see it here, it has the space has been increased. The next we'll study about the borders. Borders are basically the decorative elements, and we can use them to underline by specifying any border type like top, left, right, and we can also use it to underline it. It also acts as a separation of two things. Like we come to know where it's like a boundary. So it defines a boundary between two elements. And it has got many options or properties, like you can use the border width using the property of border width, as we can see it here. Second, we can give a color to the border using the property of border color, and we can also style it using the border style. So this is an example where we can set up the borders using the CSS rule. Now in this we can see that H1 tags have been used 5 times and with a different border style every time. Like first one it was dotted, then second time it was a solid border style, then it was dashed, double and groove. So let us see the output of it. So this is how the output will look. This is a dotted one, then you have the solid, then you have the dashed one, then this border style is double, and then you have the groove. So using different border styles we can have. Similarly, we can also change the color of the background color and the border color. Now the next is the margin. Margin basically clears an area around an element which is outside the border, and it does not have any background color and it is completely transparent. Also we can specify the top margin, the right margin, the bottom margin and the left margin independently using separate properties. Now for example, we can change the margin by specifying. In this case, I have just specified 10 px which will be applied to top, bottom, right and left, or else we can specify each property separately. As we can see it here, the top has been specified for 100 pixel, the bottom value, the right is 50 pixel and the left is 50 pixel. The next property we will be learning about is the float property. Now there are times when the browser's normal layout simply doesn't position an element the way we want. Like if we want multiple columns of text, or we want an image on the side of the page with the text wrapping around it, then none of these layouts can be achieved with the CSS properties that we have learned so far. Now in this section we can learn about float, which is useful for precisely this kind of situation. Like if you want to put the image to the left and wrap the text after it. So with the CSS float, an element can be pushed to the left or right, allowing the other elements to wrap around it. And it is very useful in case of images, but it is also useful when working with layouts. Now a floating element is removed from the normal flow of the document. Like there is always a normal flow of the document, but when we use float, it is removed from the normal flow, and the other block elements lay themselves around and underneath the floating element, ignoring it for the layout purpose, and they will wrap themselves around the floating element. So one floating element is that of image, which we'll be seeing in the example. Now just we'll go through this. The elements are floated horizontally, which means an element, it can only be floated towards the right or towards the left, not towards the top or the bottom. And a floated element will move as far as to the left or to the right as it can. The property that we'll be using is float, and the values can be left, right or none. Now for example, we can see this. Initially what I did was I used an image and then I wrote a text in paragraph using paragraph tags. So we can see, as per the normal document flow, the image is put in the beginning, and after that the paragraph is written as per the normal document flow. But when we are using float, especially when I have used float with the value as left, then the paragraph text was wrapped around the image. So I could use this space. Now in this case I could not use the space here, but in this case I have made use of the space also. If the image is small and or the text is a bit shorter in length, then it can be easily wrapped around the image. So this is how the float works. The next property is about display. Now this display property will specify how an element is to be displayed, like whether it has to be displayed as a block or as an inline. So for the display property, the values, they can be inline. Now if we specify the value as inline, then whatever text or the HTML element will be displayed within the same line. For example, if we are using two H1 tags, then they will be displayed one after the other if they are defined, or the display property is as inline. In case we specify the value as block, then it will be displayed as the block element, like it will take up the entire width of the browser window. So in one whole line it will be displayed. And in case if give the value as block inline, then it is similar to block, but we can specify the width and height here. So it will not be taking up the entire browser window space, but it can be changed. And in case the value is none, then that element will not be displayed at all. Like many a times we define certain elements on the web page, but we don't want them to be displayed under certain conditions. Then at that time we can make use of that display property with the value as none. Now when we are talking of the display property, basically there are two elements type, like one is the block and the other is the inline. So when we top of a block element, it means that it will take up the full width that is available of the browser window, and it will have a line break before and after it. For example, H1 tag, whenever we are defining a heading, so it will always be written in one single line. In case we give another heading, it will be displayed in the line below it. Similarly for a paragraph also, if we give a paragraph, it will be displayed in the form of a paragraph, and in case if there is another paragraph following it, it will be displayed after it in the next line, leaving a line break. So all those are examples of the block elements. Now when we talk of the inline element, it will take up only that much space or what is necessary, and also it will not force the line breaks. For example, if we have an anchor tag, then we can have two tags at the same line. So these are the examples of the inline elements. Also another example is of the span. So span also will be represented within a single line. It will take up space only that what is required, and the next span element can be continued after that. Now the example for display is we have used a H2 tag with the background color is yellow, the border just to give the display where it actually ends, and the display is given as inline. So this is how the output will look like. So because the H2 tag, we have used the element selector in this, so when it will be applicable to all the H2 tags which are written in the body. So we have written two H2 tags in the body, and the output is, it can be displayed, the heading can be displayed one after the other. The next we will begin with is the positioning. Like many a times we want the element to be positioned at a place, the exact location where we want. So in those cases we have to make use of CSS position property. So by using this, any HTML element can be put in a location where we like. So when we are positioning elements with the help of CSS, we can place an element exactly where we want it on the page. And we have already learned about float. By using the float property, we can push the element to the left or towards the right. So when we have the combination of positioning and floats, it gives too many possibilities of the positioning the HTML elements. Now the basic principle it is based on is we have it makes use of the top left coordinate of the browser window or the viewport, and that is the upper left corner as I have denoted it with the small red dot. So this is the reference for it, and with taking the reference of this we can position the elements. Now there are four types of positioning. The first one is the static positioning, the second one is the fixed positioning, the third one is the absolute positioning, and the fourth one is the relative positioning. Now we already know that CSS will help us to position the HTML elements. So what is the syntax for it? We have the selector. The selector can be any HTML element, and we have to make use of the property position, and then there are, apart from that, we have got four other properties like left, right, top, bottom, and you close the curly braces. Now for the position property, we have the value as static. Then it can also be given as the value fixed. The next value can be absolute, and the fourth value can be relative. So we can have four different types of positions for that particular HTML element. and then we can define the values of the left, right, top, bottom in terms of pixels, centimeter, millimeter, inches, etc. Whatever unit of measurement that we have been using earlier, we can use any of it. Now let us study, if we define the value of the property position then as static, then what does it actually mean? So basically whenever we are not giving the position, then the elements will be positioned in the HTML page as per the normal document flow. So static is that default position which follows the normal document flow. So even if we don't specify anything, then it means the value is static. The second is the relative. So whatever position as per the normal document flow the element has, and if we give the position as relative, then those values will be applied from its normal static position and it will be moved to this new relative position. So it is with reference to its normal position or the static position. Then the next is the absolute. So absolute is a position which will be considered considering the reference as the top left coordinate, and apart from that it will also take the reference of its parent container. Like in case if there is an element which is enclosed within another container or another division, then it will use the reference of that element and it will position itself as per the absolute values. And the last one is the fixed one. So fixed position is taking the reference of the browser window and it is fixed. It is irrespective of the parent element or the container element. It will just take the reference of the browser window and it will position itself as per the values that have been given in the top, bottom, left, right values. And we already know that we have to give the values in the top, bottom, left, right in the terms of those units like pixel, inches, millimeter. Now let us take one example of positioning. So it can be either it can be defined as an inline style. In this we can see that a style for H1 has been positioned using the value of absolute, and the left and the top values have been given in the pixel. Or it can also be declared as the ID container, ID selector. So in this case, it's the header is the ID selector, and we have also used the position as absolute. So there are different ways in which we can declare the CSS styles. Now let us learn about the static positioning. So we've already learned that the static position is the default position for the HTML elements, and whatever, even if we specify the top, left, right, bottom properties, then the element will not get affected by it. So it will follow the normal document flow. So whatever the normal document flow is supposed to place those elements one after the other, so those elements will be placed one after the other only. Now the next is the fixed positioning. So as the name indicates, it's going to be fixed and it will take with respect to the browser window. So it will force an element to fix itself to the relative to the browser window, and the element will not move even if the page is scrolled. And it does not follow the normal document flow. So if in case an element was supposed to be placed at 10 pixel as per the normal document flow, while in the fixed positioning it was specified to be placed at 20 pixels, so it will place itself at the 20 pixel position only. It will not follow that normal document flow. So the next part is the absolute positioning. So this is always with a reference to the screen top left corner. That is, suppose if the screen is this, so this is the screen top left corner. So always the elements will be positioned taking the reference of it. So it will also not follow the normal document flow, and it will remove the elements from the normal flow and position them as per the values that have been indicated by the top, bottom, left or right values. And also it will not leave any empty space after it is positioned. The next is the relative positioning. Now relative positioning follows the normal document flow. So it will keep the elements in the general flow of the elements of the page, and it will move the element relative to the normal position. So in case the element was supposed to be placed at 10 pixel as per the normal document flow, and we have specified it to be placed at 20 pixel, so it will move, offset itself from that 10 px position to and at that 20 pixel and then position itself. So that is it follows the general flow of the elements on the page. And the difference between the absolute and the relative positioning is how the position is calculated. First of all, it follows the normal document flow and it offsets itself from the normal position, while in relative positioning the position is calculated from the top left browser window, and in this the element it obtains space in the document after it is positioned. Now I have given a very simple example using image, and we are basically using 4 types of images, and we are not using any type of positioning. We are simply placing the image one after the other, and this document is going to follow the normal document flow. So first we will see how the images will be placed as per the normal document flow. So this is before positioning. We can see there are 4 images. What I have done is I have put the suffix of every position. Like the first image is you can consider it to be an image, but it will be a static type. Similarly, the second image is the similar image, but consider it as a fixed positioning. The third one is the absolute, and fourth is the relative image. Now they are not following any positioning. This is a normal document flow. See the way they have been placed in line one after the other. In case image, as we have learned, it is an inline element. So you can see it is placed in the same line one after the other. Now next we will see after positioning. What I have done is I have applied the positions to all those 4 images. The first one will be positioned as static. The second one will be the position is fixed. The third one is absolute, and the fourth one is relative. So once we give those positions and the values of the position, the left is going to be for every image. It's going to be 10 pixel from the left, and from the top it is going to be 10 pixel. The first part you can see I have not specified the position, because in case I don't specify, it is going to consider it to be static. So no need to specify it usably. So the rest 3 have been specified, and the top and the left have the same values. So we know that if it is static, it is simply going to be in the first position. As we had seen in the previous, the static will be in the same position. Even after positioning, it should be in the same position. Now let us go to the next. So as per our understanding, if we specify the next image to be fixed, now if we specify this image to be fixed with the top and left to be 100 pixel, then we know when it is fixed, it is going to consider the top left of the browser window, and from there it will move itself 100 pixel to the left and from the top 100. So it should be somewhere here. Again, absolute also will follow the same from the top left, because that is the container for it. So it should also be overlapping the fixed image. And when we talk of the relative image, because it is the fourth image, so we've already seen that the fourth image was supposed to be here, and then as per the normal document flow, because they have been given some positions, it will be in the second position, and then it using those values of top and left, it will position itself from that normal position. Again it will shift itself 100 pixel from the top and 100 pixel from the right and position in its new position. So this will be the output after positioning, and we can see that static is in the same position. Then you have the absolute and the fixed overlapping each other, because they are considering the top left as their reference coordinate, and then you have the relative, which has moved itself from this part till here. This is the relative position. I hope you have understood. Thank you.